Welcome to the Parenting in the Digital Age podcast. Many parents are concerned that their child might be falling behind. Others are just looking for ways to help their children thrive, not just in the classroom, but socially, and well into their future careers. Each episode, we explore the challenges facing parents in the modern world, from behavior, education, and nutrition to device and gaming addiction. We interview a range of leaders in the area of childhood development to help you successfully navigate parenting in the digital age. Here is your host, Jamie Buttigieg.
Hello parents and welcome to Parenting in the Digital Age, the podcast where we delve into the unique challenges and opportunities of raising children in today's fast-paced, tech-driven world. Each episode features conversations with experts and thought leaders who provide actionable guidance and practical insights for navigating life as modern parents. Today we're joined by Josh Wood, an educator, online fitness coach and public speaker who brings a unique perspective to the table, blending his passion for fitness, wilderness exploration and personal development. Born and raised in the heartland of America and having spent considerable time in places such as Melbourne and British Columbia, Josh has a rich tapestry of experiences that inform his approach to fitness and life. Now calling Tasmania home, Josh embodies the spirit of adventure, whether guiding through wilderness or coaching in the fitness world. Josh is also the founder of Strong for Life, an online fitness coaching organisation. Today, we're eager to explore how parents can harness the principles of health, fitness, nutrition, and the great outdoors to enrich their family lives in this digital era. Josh, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Before we jump into thwhat don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're passionate about?
Ooh, sure thing. What do I do? Professionally, I run an online fitness coaching business. I manage a few coaches, and we have a nutritionist, and we work with people all over the planet. I'm helping them with their health and fitness. And really our target demographic is busy parents and professionals, people who just don't have the time and energy to try and figure everything out on their own. So we figure it out for them. Outside of that, I partake in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I stay pretty active when I can. Bit of traditional archery here and there, and I'm really fond of playing Irish music.
Okay, that's interesting. And is that on an instrument? What sort of instrument do you play with Irish music?
Flute.
Ah, fantastic. Well, that's the first for the show. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you sharing. Now, tell me something. How does a young man, you grew up in Minnesota and Nebraska, how does a young man from Minnesota and Nebraska end up living in Tasmania? Now, for our listeners who are overseas, Tasmania is an island state of Australia. So, like, we're kind of neighbours, Josh. How did you end up here?
Oh, boy. I left the U.S. when I was 18. That was back in 2007. And I went backpacking. And I went over to the UK, and I was over there about 6 months, and I met this nice Australian girl in a hostel. And so that year I moved to Australia in 2008 when I was 19 years old. And she's my wife now. We've got 2 kids. And yeah, we checked a few places out in Australia. A handful of years ago, we went and lived in Canada for a couple of years, got a 2-year visa, lived over there on Vancouver Island. And after living on Vancouver Island, like we were living in Melbourne before that for about a decade. And I was like, there's no more city life for us. We got to go where the mountains meet the sea. And Tassie was it. We're like, okay, that's the place to go. We're going to go there. We're going to settle down, start a family. That's what we did.
Excellent. How old are your kids? Can I ask?
My oldest son is 3.5 and my youngest is 4 months.
Okay, nice young family. And Ted, for those who have never been, Tasmania is a tremendous place filled with history from our First Nations people and, of course, our later British history, but just the most breathtaking scenery anyone's ever seen. So if you haven't been there, get down there and visit Josh. Now, tell me a bit about this online coaching program, because most of us who have a traditional view of the world think, well, okay, if I have a personal trainer, I go to a gym and they sort of beat me and work me into fitness. Well, how does online coaching even work?
Well, it's just remote beating of clients, just no, it's so I worked in gyms for I've been training people since 2011. That's when I started working in gyms for the first time. And basically, I kept running into this issue where most people can afford to see a personal trainer about once a week. And these days, it's around $100. $100, you get an hour. You can't do anything in an hour that's going to change your life. You can't account for the other 167 hours of the week. You can do 30 to 40 minutes of exercise, and if you're lucky, that PT is going to be taking a look at your food journals or your nutrition, giving you some things to do outside of that. But I just kept running into this issue. It's like, I can only work with so many people one-on-one. You run out of hours very quickly. And you can only do so much with someone. You're like, man, no, we need to be looking at your sleep. You're not sleeping well. That's why you're having these issues. Oh, man, no, we got to be taking a look at your food more regularly. Or, it's your stress levels. Let's start putting together some stress management strategies. Couldn't do that in an hour a week. And so moving to an app-based system, because everything's an app these days, I've created these systems where I can, myself and my coaches that work under me, like we can be in your pocket, like a live-in coach every day of the week through technology. And it ends up working out, about the price of a 1 hour PT session here in Hobart, a little bit cheaper than what I was charging, but still it's approximately where it's at. And now we can manage people's whole lifestyles, start looking at their food more consistently, start putting together plans for managing stress, give them their workouts whenever they need them with instructional videos and coaching videos and much more back and forth and sort of daily touch points to make sure people are staying on track. And it just moved up the accountability level to 1,000.
Yeah, it's interesting because living that abundant life or that healthy lifestyle is more than just going to the gym once a week or even 5 times a week. There's a lot more to it. And you mentioned sleep and stress and work and routine. There are a few things, but I think there are many parents listening that may be new to fitness. Maybe have gotten caught in the rat race, their studies, careers, children. Maybe, well, not maybe. Many parents put their kids in life first, and they think they have no time for fitness. So, for parents that are new to this sort of fitness journey, what are some ways that they can maybe start, or start to integrate physical activity into their daily routine with kids?
Yeah, that's always a hard position to be in. And I'm back in the trenches with a 4-month-old. I understand time issues and sleep deprivation. Our whole family does. But the most important thing you can do is something. So many people think they have to do everything and then they get overwhelmed and they don't do anything. Just walk. Just go for a walk every day. I start a lot of people out with 30 minutes of walking a day, but they have to be accountable for it, which means they have to be consistent. And a lot of people are like, I don't have 30 minutes. It's like, great. You got 10 minutes. You know what? Take 10 minutes after every meal and go for a walk. That's 30 minutes. Across the week, that's over 3 hours. Like if I said we need to walk 3 hours a week, most people go, oh, what? I don't have time for that. It's like, well, you got 10 minutes after each meal. I can guarantee it. Okay. Well, there's 3.5 hours a week. Easy peasy. And the thing is, just find the smallest, most impactful thing you can do and just nail that every single day. 10 minutes of walking after a meal is game changing. And I call it working with TNT. It's all about these tiny noticeable things, these itty bitty things, and you just stack them up day after day. These tiny things, you add 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, all of a sudden you're almost 4 hours of extra exercise a week that you wouldn't have done. And it's TNT that moves mountains. It's just those little things day after day.
Yeah, I love it. I love James Clear's Atomic Habits and finding those triggers and then building those habits on top of those. Like I love that notion of, every time you eat, go for a walk for 10 minutes. It's a simple starting point. And, for those parents and when we make excuses, I make excuses, we all do.
We all do.
So that's a great piece of advice. You're still a young parent. I'm an older parent. I've got 4 kids and 2 grandkids. And maybe this is only new, but you must be thinking about the balance of screen time and outdoor activities in your household.
Yeah.
So how do you currently balance, or how are you going to balance the screen time / outdoor activities in your household? Yeah,
it's interesting. So outdoor activities is easy for us. My wife runs a nature play business. She runs nature play groups, bush play groups for young preschool age kids and runs like postpartum mothers groups with babies. It's all nature based outside because she's an educator by trade. So my kids are outside most of the time. My firstborn, he'd be outside 20 hours a week every week since he was born, kind of thing. But we had to do a trip, not this last Christmas, but the one before, to the U.S. Went back for Christmas so that my family could meet my kids, meet their grandkids. And of course, a 24 hours of travel and a single 14-hour flight is a tricky thing to do with a 2-year-old. And so that's when we started screen time. Started using that. He didn't see a screen really until he was at least 2. And we said, well, this is the time we're going to introduce it. And so we got to play with the little screen on the back of the airplane seat. And we had an old phone that we downloaded some, I don't remember what the shows were, some random stuff and some little things he could watch that were, educational, but age appropriate. And then it's been part of his life ever since. Now, the big thing for us and how we manage screen time is it's a tool. It's not something that is required. It's not something that is necessarily an everyday thing, but it's a useful thing to help manage a child who cannot regulate themselves. Like my older son, Theo, like he's wild. Like he just goes until he can't even stand up straight, and he's running into walls and bonking his head on stuff. I'm like, dude, you need to sit down. He's like, I can't, like, I gotta build, I gotta play with these imaginary airplanes or whatever it is. Like it's just go. He can't regulate himself. And it's kind of like, let's just sit down. We're going to have some quiet time. Watch. He's really into Octonauts right now, which is from ABC Kids. And it's fun. It's educational. They're 11-minute episodes. It's one of those things like, okay, we got a baby. I work full time. My wife needs to manage the baby sometimes, needs to do other things. So we use it as a tool. It's a thing that we never do it in the morning. We never do it in the evenings. There's a set time in the afternoon that if we're going to do TV and we're home, that's when you have to choose what you're going to watch. That's the only thing that you get to choose. If it's a longer show, that's the only one. If it's a shorter, like 11-minute episodes, we go, well, how many do we have time for today? And what were we going to do around it? And if we've already been outside doing all the fun stuff, we don't really see a big issue with it. It's a period of rest and time for parents to sort of figure out what to do next. Take care of the baby, put the baby down for a nap, clean the kitchen, sort out some work stuff, whatever it is. So we see it as a tool. We have one TV in the house that's in the living space. We don't do handheld or mobile devices. I know some people will say use like an iPad or something, but from a posture point of view, like being hunched over that little screen, well, that's not good. So he's on the couch, he's about 4 meters away from a TV on the wall that's slightly up, so he could sit there and he's not stooped over. And so we're trying to manage it because you can't not have screens in this day and age. Like it's going to be part of life at some point. And so the thing that we're trying to instill is that it's not a given. It's not an always. It's a treat. It's an enjoyable thing, but it's not something that you have free reign of. So structure.
Yeah, that's some great wisdom, some great advice there, Josh. And, sometimes the cards are definitely stacked against our kids. And, as we try as parents to regulate screen time and provide balance or model balancing, for our kids as well. Sometimes these apps and shows even, these pieces of technology and software and gaming are all designed to attract their focus and retain their focus for the most extended periods. That's how they incentivize these apps, right? So It can be quite hard for us. One of the things we do in our own business at Skill Samurai is we teach kids how to program, how to code. And part of me as a parent coming into this business was about, how do we help kids develop a healthy relationship with technology? How do we help kids regulate themselves with technology by fostering a love? You said it, right? Screens are all around us. Technology it's imperative. Like, let's teach kids what's behind it. Let's teach them to innovate it. Let's teach kids the leadership resilience aspect instead of being this consumption or this passive bystander or consumer of technology.
Yeah.
And that's really helped many, many parents in our communities. One of the other things we like to focus on is resilience. So I want to ask you about resilience for a second. You'll have your own experience. You've probably seen this in jiu-jitsu and other avenues in your career. But, building resilience is critical for kids. But how can they foster, or how can parents build resilience through physical activities or outdoor activities? Got any tricks or hacks for us there?
Oh, man. Just make sure that those things happen. The kids need to have a level of freedom, and they need to learn risk management from the get-go. You need to let them hurt themselves playing out in nature, get scratches, get dirt in their butt, bonk their head on stuff. Like, they have to experience that to learn risk management. And, resilience comes through having lots of small incidences that you can then brush off. And that's the terminology we use. If you fall and scrape your leg or bump your head or scratch yourself on a stick, just brush it off. He gets up, and now I'll be like, "Oh, geez, buddy, are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just brush it off." And he stands up and he dusts off his little knees and goes about business. But because from the get-go, he's been out there, he's been rolling around in the dirt and crawling. He was climbing stuff before he could walk, and learning that risk management. You have to put them in situations where there is a level of danger that is acceptable to you, and of course safe enough that they're not going to be permanently injured, but they have to get the scrapes and the bumps and the bruises and the dirt in the face, and they have to eat the mud and things to learn how to navigate life. And it teaches a lot of, like, again, risk management, like understanding what risks are worthwhile and what aren't. But through that process of learning that, you're building resiliency, because you have to survive all these little micro events that lead to the scrapes and the scratches and the bruises and eating things that are gross and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's important to let our kids fall, even from a young age. And so many times, and now with our young granddaughter, we babysit her every Thursday. And when I'm not working, I love to take her to the park. And you see so many, I'm not bunching young parents up into a single basket, but running to protect, or running to stop another kid from hitting their kid, or stopping to, so their kid doesn't fall. And I get that. You want to protect your kid. I've got 4 of my own. But sometimes you got to let them get hit, and teach them how to deal with that. Let them fall and teach them how to brush it off. So some great advice, wise advice there. Now, in your own podcast, in your own speaking events, you talk about the wilderness being moments away from your doorstep. So for city slickers like us, how can urban dwelling families create a sense of adventure and appreciation for nature within our own environment? Or do we just have to get in the car and drive there?
You don't. There's so many things you can do. I mean, if you're living in a city, especially a city in Australia, every major city has wonderful parks. Wonderful parks. Take your kids, just and yourself, into places that have lots of greenery and foliage. I know they're structured, and they're within the city still, but just being in that space and allowing like free play for your kids, allowing them to just explore weird textures and things that grow and sticks and rocks. Like, everything's so sterile these days. All the playgrounds are covered in rubber and bright colored paint. My son Theo, he just, because he grew up being out in the yard, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be out in the bush, just be under a tree, play under a tree. But we'd take him to parks when he was younger, and playgrounds, and he'd run around and check out all the equipment. And then after a while, he'd go, I need a bushwalk. And he'll go and like sit in the shrubs, like the decorative grasses and stuff. And he'd just sit in there and be like, I just need a bushwalk. And like, he'll just go like take himself out and sit in the scrubs. Nowadays, he mostly just goes over and pees on them. But like, it's still like parks, man, they have so much available exploration. Like, get outside the playgrounds, and if you got a yard, just throw your kids out in the yard and let them make adventures. Play with sticks, they become everything. Play with rocks, they become everything. Get in the dirt. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've lived in big cities. I've lived in Melbourne, and I've been to a lot of big cities, but there's always a place where you can have some adventure. You can find some unstructured space somewhere. You can find a green lot that hasn't been sold yet and it's overgrown with grasses and weeds. Like, you don't ever have to go that far. Not here in Australia, not most places I've been in the US or Canada either. You don't have to go out bush for a week. You don't have to go camping overnight. Just start spending time in whatever green spaces you can find, and then just build up from there.
I love it, and you should be pretty proud there, Josh. It's seeing your son there able to self-regulate and be able to say, "I need a bushwalk." Okay, like, how cool is that at such a young age?
Oh, it's so funny. Like, he's been doing that for so long, and he'll just like be done with the playground and be like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna go like pick up sticks in this little decorative shrub area." And he's more interested in playgrounds now because he can do more on them because he's a little bit bigger and he can climb and jump and use all the contraptions because he's very into mechanics. He likes things that move. But he still will be like, all right, I'm going to go climb that tree now.
Yeah. So apart from your amazing talents with the flute, playing Irish music, is it called a flute? What is that instrument called?
Yeah, that's a flute. Yeah, I play the penny whistle as well, but this is a flute. Yeah.
Okay, so apart from those amazing talents, you're a fan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and as much as our work with kids is in a classroom, I'm a big fan of getting kids involved in team and sports and physical activity. So tell me how something like, why should parents consider something like martial arts or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for their kids? Why it's so important?
Yeah, I've been involved in combat sports basically my entire life since I was 17. I've been involved with kickboxing. I've competed in boxing and jiu-jitsu, like always in that stuff, worked with some of the kids' classes. And there's just, especially for young boys, having that space where they just get to be wild and intense with some structure, but also in like, it's a padded room or you're wearing protective gear. Like, you don't get to do that out in the real world. And, not only is that a great space for unleashing those energies, it teaches both respect and consequences like nothing else. Like, you learn very quickly, like, if you do certain things, someone's going to punch you in the face. Someone is going to throw you to the ground. Someone is going to roll you in a ball, depending on the sport that you're in. And those very real consequences in a pretty safe environment teach that resilience, teach you how to navigate certain situations, but give you confidence. And this is sort of a concept I talk about a lot is contextualizing your life. If you grow up in a sport that involves physical contact and involves, being hit, kicked, wrestling, rolling, grappling, whatever it is, like anything full contact, everything else becomes pretty easy and simple. You're not going to be sitting there worried about homework being the worst thing in your life because no one's going to hit you in the face. Like, you're not going to be stressed out about little things that give people so much anxiety in life. Oh, geez, I need to, make sure I get this thing done or the world's going to end. It's like, well, it's not. Also, no one's hitting you in the head. Also, no one's trying to choke you. Also, no one's trying to wrestle you to the ground. Like, things could be worse. Things could be tougher. And if you undertake difficult things voluntarily, all the other stuff you do becomes easier. And that's a lesson that I think is really valuable for children, but also that resilience, and then understanding that not only can you handle certain situations, you can survive so much more than you think about. And that builds confidence too.
Yeah, and it teaches kids how to lose. It teaches kids how to lose. One of the biggest things we see with young kids coming into our classrooms, they don't know how to lose gracefully. They don't know how to handle defeat. They're really challenged emotionally by the concept, largely because many of the parents don't allow them to experience competitive environments. And I think it's extremely important that kids can go into a competitive, like jiu-jitsu, when you're rolling at the end of the night or at the end of the class, you might roll 5 times, you're going to lose 3 times. in quick succession, and that it's okay to lose and that we grow from losing. And, some people don't like that word, but life is about losing. You're going to come second at almost everything you do as a human. You're coming second, right?
If you're lucky.
And, if you're lucky. So I think it's one of the best things about things like jiu-jitsu in particular. It teaches kids how to lose and how to be really, really great sport. And, as you said, build resilience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk for a second about nutrition. I know that's something you're passionate about. And, you've got young parents like yourself trying to navigate nutrition. What do I feed? How do I feed? When do I feed? How do you deal with, I know it's a terribly broad question, but take it where you want to take it. How do you approach nutrition in your family?
Oh, boy. We keep things pretty simple. We're not real strict on you must eat this thing that we've made or you must eat a certain thing. It's more like, well, when it comes to meals, we make a thing. This is what's on the menu tonight. We always have sort of like a safe food, which is usually like yogurt and fruit. But everything is anchored around a protein. You have to eat your protein before you get other things. My oldest son, Theo, he's got a sweet tooth. He's got a sweet tooth. And so he'll be like, can I have toast with jam and honey and maple syrup? I'm like, no, that's not food. That's just candy. No, you can have some toast and jam if you've eaten a protein with it. Or like last night, he wanted to have blueberries, frozen blueberries. We're like, okay, cool. We can have frozen blueberries for dinner, but you have to have a protein with it. And so it's usually like we're big on yogurt. It's like, okay, so would you like to have that with yogurt, or would you like that on the side with some cheese? We still got. This morning he woke up. He's like, I want naan bread and butter chicken. And it's like, okay, well, we have leftover butter chickens. Like, you can have some naan bread if you eat the butter chicken too. It always comes down to you got to eat your protein, and then everything else is accessory. And if you're a 3.5-year-old who never stops running, I'm not at all worried about how much you're eating. I'm just worried about the balance of it, because we got to make sure that you're getting what you need for your body and brain to develop, which is good fats and proteins. And then everything else just becomes fuel for that endless engine. So everything is just really focused around making sure you get those building blocks. You got to have a good protein with each meal. You can have, and everything else is pretty much whole foods. So, whether you want to have some sourdough toast with that or fruits or whatever, it's like, he's got some leeway. But if we have a meal that he hasn't had before, he's like, I don't like that. It's like, well, you haven't tried that. If you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to eat this. You can have yogurt and fruit. You can have leftovers from last night, but you have to try it and then tell me. So we just base everything, like anchor all of the meals with protein, give them some options with that. I'm really boring with my own food. I just sort of eat the same stuff all the time, except for the occasional dinners, just because it's easy for me. I'm not too fussed, but the rest of the family likes a little bit more pizzazz. So we just have some options. We have some safe foods. We eat a lot of yogurt, cottage cheese, and then Theo's really big on chicken and fish. So, we usually keep some fish fingers in the freezer. We usually have some sort of chicken dish during the week, and there's leftovers. And so it's like, you have to try this. If you don't like it, fine. We have something else you can have. Meals and everything have to be based around protein. You can't just eat toast with honey and maple syrup and jam. But you can have some of that as long as you've eaten the essentials first. And just anchoring everything like that keeps things pretty well balanced.
Great family advice there, Josh. As we start to wrap up and wind up the podcast for today, there's one question we like to ask all of our guests. It's a bit of a fun question, but if Coach Josh were to go back to your younger, let's say 12-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
12-year-old me? Eat more and go to the gym. 100%. I was just scrawny my whole life. I didn't put on any meaningful weight until like my mid-20s. And it was so much work. It took me too long to figure out the eating side of stuff and the exercise side of stuff. Just, especially going into high school, early puberty would have been like, man, just eat as much as you can and start learning to pick up heavy things. it'll make your life so much easier.
Great advice, Josh. Thank you for joining us on the show. Before we wrap up, how can our listeners reach out with you, connect with your online training? How do we find you in the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Coach Josh Wood, or through my website, strongforlife.online. Now, if you Google Coach Josh Tasmania or Strong for Life online coaching, you'll find it.
Coach Josh, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate the advice, wisdom, and generosity. Hope we cross paths again soon. Cheers and bye for now.
Thanks, Jamie.
If you enjoyed the show, please connect with Jamie on LinkedIn or Instagram. You'll find links in the podcast description. Parenting in the Digital Age is sponsored by Skill Samurai, Coding and STEM Academy for Kids. Skill Samurai offers after-school coding classes and holiday programs to help kids thrive academically and socially while preparing them for the careers of the future. Visit skillsamurai.com.au.